everyone, my name's Megan. I'm an artist here at Say with Clay, and today I want to show you how to make a beautiful swirl star decoration. So I'm going to start by showing you everything in your kit that you got and talking about each piece. So first of all, you should have 2 pounds of clay that we're going to use all to make our star. We should also have a piece of dental floss that we are going to be using as a wire tool to cut our clay. We have a sponge that we're going to use to smooth if we need to. We have another floss kind of tool that we can use for a couple different things. We have a comb, piece of a comb that we're going to use to scratch and attach our coils. And we have a wooden pin tool that we can use to carve things if we needed to. We also have some paintbrushes, and we have a whole bunch of underglazes that we are going to be using to color our piece. So the other items you might need today is you could possibly need newspaper to cover your work area. Keep in mind that you want to be in an area that you are okay with getting a little messy. Clay does wash out because it's basically dirt, but your underglazes can potentially stain. So you do want to make sure that whatever you're wearing, you're okay with it getting messy, and same with your area. You might want a tray or a paper plate to use as a palette for your glazes. You will want a container of a little bit of water for making slip. You might want water for your glazes again if you want to wash your brushes. And then we're gonna need something to roll out our clay. Now obviously a rolling pin is ideal, but if you don't have one on hand or don't have one that you want to use for clay, you can use your hands to smush it out into a flat piece. You could use any other round item that you can roll, like a PVC pipe or anything like that, to get it nice and flat into a clay pancake, okay? So our very first step that we have to do in our construction is we have to wedge our clay. And the reason why we wedge our clay is so that there are no air bubbles in it. Because, and I like to stand up when I'm doing this, it's easier for me. But the reason why we don't want air bubbles, we're pushing this away and pulling it back towards us and smushing out the air bubbles. The reason why we don't want air bubbles is because when this goes into the kiln and gets fired, the heat and the pressure in the kiln can make your piece explode if there are air bubbles. So we really want to make sure that we wedge at least like 20 times. And I'm turning it as I do it, so I'm wedging it like this. You can kind of see the spiral that's happening. And I'm turning it and starting again from this side. I'm going to wedge about 20 times. Make sure there are really no air bubbles. And on top of that, we can also use our dental floss to double check. So I take my dental floss, put it halfway, hold my clay, and pull this through. Very satisfying. And I can see that this is nice and smooth. There are no pockets of air bubbles, so I'm good to go. But I do have to, again, re-homogenize this. So get it back together and get it air bubble free again. Okay, so I don't have to wedge it as many times as I did for the first one, but I do still need to smush it back together. If you mess up at any point and you need to roll it out, just smush it back up into a ball and wedge it again, go through that process. It should be good as new. So clay is very forgiving that way, which is nice for us. So first thing you're going to do to get it into a pancake is we are going to take out some of our frustration on our clay. And I want to flip it in between every once in a while so it doesn't stick to my workspace. I can also flip it long ways versus horizontal so that I'm making somewhat of an even shape. Also trying to make sure that I'm hitting it all the way around my piece and I'm not like punching it because we want to try to keep it as even as we can. So now it's pretty flat. It's not as flat as I need it to be for this, but it's pretty flat. If you don't have a rolling pin or something else round to roll this, I would stand up and I would use the heels of my hand to kind of gently push my clay outward, kind of smear it outward to make it thinner. It's a little harder to keep it even that way, but with all the stuff that we're attaching, probably won't notice much. If you do have a rolling pin, you want to keep it as even as you can by rolling. Imagine you have a line halfway, rolling up and rolling down halfway. So I'm rolling up, rolling down, just one roll. Then I'm flipping it. Same thing, half up, half down. Flip it over entirely, half up. Ooh, I'm gonna hit my star. Half down. Half up, half down. And this is gonna keep it pretty even. So I think that that is a good thickness. I wouldn't go any thinner than this for this project. You might even wanna be a little thicker than this, just so that it can support all of the weight of the coils that we're gonna add on top. So you really wanna make sure that it's going to be able to do that. So maybe even a little thicker than what I'm using right now. So if you have like a big cookie cutter, that would probably be ideal. But I don't know many people who have made cookies this big, so you might not have that on hand. So you can draw something first on a piece of paper or a piece of newspaper. This would be able to be the right size. So if I drew this out, we're gonna imagine I draw, oh, here's a pencil. So if I draw this out and make a star, I can draw it by doing the method of having your lines cross on top of each other. Or it can be more of an uneven star, because that can be a really nice sort of rustic look. Or if you really want, you can make it into a different shape. It's up to you. But you want it to be decently big. So this is a little smaller than what I have here, but that's an okay size. All right, so now that I have that, I would cut it out, or you could just place it on top and press over top of your lines. Do that with that pencil, or I could use my pin tool and just very lightly press over these lines. And this is gonna transfer it to my clay. Lift this up, and I have my star, okay? Now I'm ready to cut it out. I could cut it out with the pin tool, or I could actually use the little dental floss tool that I have, because it has a sharp end. I want to save this for my coils. And that as well. I want to have as much extra clay as possible. Rather have too much extra clay than not enough. And last one. There we go. And our star is cut out, okay? Any thinner than this, and these might be an issue as far as coming off of the body, so fatter parts of a star might be a little better. So So if I didn't like this, if I thought this was a little too thin, maybe it is, but it's fine for our demo, I would just smush it back up and roll it out again after wedging. So if I want to make my edges a little bit nicer, I would run my finger over these edges and make them a little bit smooth. Okay, I would do that to the whole thing. And then I'm going to make some slip. So I'm going to take a little bit of clay, just a bit, and a little bit of water, and I'm going to smush this into my water. I'm just squishing it into the little bowl, smushing it around with the water, and it's gonna make some very slimy, squishy clay. This is what we use basically as our glue to get all of these coils to stay on our star. So now that I made my slip, I can put it to the side, and we can go back to our star and use our comb to scratch the surface of our entire star. So this is the front, where all the coils will be. If you have ever used clay before, you have probably slipped and scored or scratched and attached to apply one piece of clay to another piece of clay. And you need to do that. You can't just take a piece and smush it onto another piece because otherwise it will fall off in the kiln. So you need that extra glue to get it to stay. So you're gonna go multiple directions and cover your entire star surface. Okay, make sure that it's completely good to go. You know what, these are a little long for me, and this is why I can edit anytime. I'm gonna cut them down just because I'm nervous they're gonna fall off if I don't cut them down. This is probably something I should have done when I was drawing, right? But you'll learn from my mistakes. There we go. That makes me feel a lot better. They feel a lot more sturdy now. So we have our entire star covered. Now we're ready to make our coils. So I think the easiest way is to make all of our coils and then piece them together where we want on our star. So I'm just gonna put this to the side a little bit, and we are going to be using our pieces. We can just rip off a little piece of clay, and we're gonna make a coil. The way that you make a coil is you just roll it between your fingers or roll it on the table a little bit. It's probably easiest between your hands. So you have a little snake, and then you just roll it in on itself to make the spiral. I'm just going to start to curve it in. Till it's the size that I like. If I wanted it to be smaller, I could rip it off earlier. And then I need to kind of seal my spiral. So I'm just going to smush that into the rest of my spiral. Okay, so I made one. So I would go and I would make more. Again, rip off a piece, roll it in your hand, and spiral it inward. I think it's easiest to spiral on the table, but it's up to you. And then smush that, blend it into the side of my spiral. So I would make a couple bigger ones. So these are probably medium sized or small sized if you look at the example. I'm gonna take a little bit more clay this time. You can kind of experiment with these. All right, so now I made a whole bunch of spirals. I have some bigger ones, I have some medium ones, I have some really tiny ones. And I'm gonna kind of figure out where I want these to be before I start attaching them. First of all, I want to put some slip, which we had already made, right, by squishing clay into our water and smushing it around onto my whole piece. And I wanna do this pretty liberally, like pretty attach, put a decent amount of slip on here. Because this way, if you have a lot of slip on here, you won't have to put it on the back of each and every spiral. You don't want to get rid of your score marks. You just want to gently lay the slip and the water mixture on top. Normally I would say to scratch and attach everything that you attach together by putting slip and scratching on each. But if we're putting a lot of slip on here and smushing it, I think it'll be fine. Okay. So now you can kind of decide where you want things to be. I would probably start with one of my bigger ones in the center, maybe moving another one down one of the larger sides of my star, and then starting to fill in with my medium and my smaller pieces. Can have them touching. If I need to make more coils, I can, which I probably would. To really fill this in, I'd probably need to make some smaller ones. To get maybe some of those corners and things like that. So I don't want to press them down yet because I do still need to scratch each of them. Once I make that decision, say yes, I definitely want that there. Scratch it a couple times and then gently press it into place. I don't want to press it too hard or else it'll smush the spiral. And then I'm going to be filling in my spaces in between my spirals with just balls of clay. I'll show you how I'm going to do that in a second. So now I've got my spirals. I've got to fill in all those spaces. So I'm going to take some of my extra clay, rip off a small piece, and just roll it between my hands to make a ball. And then I can just take this and smush this into space. I don't actually need to be using slip. Make some smaller ones to get into those little tiny spots. Do have to press it in there pretty well to get it to stay. You could make them all first if you wanted, instead of doing it piece by piece. It's up to you. If you have some that are right on the corner edge of a star on a point, like this one, you can kind of press this and mold it to that star point shape. That's really attached there. And you would continue working until you fill your entire space. Once you do that, you have to consider what you are going to use this for, whether you're going to let it be completely decorative and have it propped up somewhere, whether it's going to be a trivet or something like that, or whether you're going to hang it. So I'm going to show you where you would put holes if you were hanging this. Actually, before you put the holes, I would carve your initials into the back very lightly with your pin tool, so we know whose is whose. So then we can place our holes into here. I would probably use the other end of a paintbrush for this. I don't know if I would put it through a spiral. I'd probably put it through one of the holes or in between one of the balls of clay in a spiral. And I'd probably put 2 to make sure it's stable. You don't want it too close to the edge, so you don't want it to break. So I chose here and here. And now I need to make sure that the holes are actually clear. So I would get rid of this extra clay on the back, actually go back through, could wiggle the paintbrush around a little bit. But essentially you want to make it possible for this to actually be struck up when it's finished. You want to make sure you can see all the way through. When you are completed constructing, you are ready for glaze. So I would put a piece of newspaper down underneath your piece so that it doesn't get glaze all over your table. And then you can grab a meat tray or a paper plate to use as a palette, and you can get your glazes and your brushes. Here's my brushes. You could also get a little piece of, or a little container of water if you wanted to wash out brushes. So you're going to get black and white and 3 different colors of glazes. Now glazes are different than paints because they have a chemical reaction in the kiln when they go and get fired with the temperature. And they actually turn either brighter or darker than the color that you see in front of you. So if you're mixing colors, because you can actually mix it like paint and make a new shade of that color, that's totally fine. If you're mixing colors, keep in mind it's not going to be exactly like you see in front of you. Be similar, but not exactly the same shape. So then I can just mix it together. Make a lighter version of this orange that I have. And then I can start painting. So you can do this in a couple different ways. You could paint it all one color and then add like little accents, or you could paint each of these a different color. Maybe you wanted to make the balls of clay different colors than the spirals, or the different size spirals different colors. It's completely up to you. So if you're going to do one solid color first, I would recommend painting everything that color, letting it dry completely, putting a second coat, and then adding your accent colors. When you do your first coat like this, make sure you get the edges whenever you're doing this. When you're doing your first coat, you are going to see your clay through your glaze. It's going to show through a little bit because it's a very thin coat of glaze. When it's dry, it'll look a little lighter, it'll be kind of dusty, then you'll know that you're ready for a second coat. And I would do 2 to 3 coats of your glaze to make sure it's really nice and solid. If you don't do that, it's gonna be kind of streaky. This is what you're going for, okay? So do 2 to 3 coats and then add whatever accent colors you want. If you wanted to paint these individually, it's gonna be a little bit tedious, but it could look really cool. You could take your color, start painting them on their own. Then go in with a different color on a different one. Remember to get the edges of your star as well. And do all your coats. And then you would be pretty much finished. So I hope you had a good time making your project, and thank you for joining me today.